sending you a on our topic, which is the imperialism in East Asia. And I'm happy that I am able to do this virtually, though I am not begin. Oh, by the way, when you're done with this lecture, please click mark as graded, but I would want to know if you have listened to the lecture or not. And the only way that I will know that is if you will click mark as done. Okay, so let's begin. I'm just going to what you call this, the laser pointer here. Okay, so let's start with imperialism in East Asia. Now, imperialism is a political system wherein empires were being built already. It was not just a colony, but this is a period in time wherein Asia was in the middle of the greed that was rampant around Europe. Um, the greed that sort of pushed them to want to build huge empires. They wanted to have more territory over which they are in control of. So you are going to learn about how, particularly in this segment, how East Asia became a victim of this ideology. Okay, so let us begin with China in the age of imperialism. Okay, so China in the age of imperialism. Now, we will begin our, the dynasty songs. I hope you already memorized that and have like committed that to heart because it's a very quick way wherein with a very quick way for you to memorize the dynasties of China. So we are at the last dynasty of China, which is the Qing dynasty. And the Qing dynasty was a foreign dynasty, okay? It was kind of like the Yuan dynasty, wherein the Mongolians were the ones who were in control of China. The Qing dynasty, it was also foreigners that were in control of China. And these foreigners are the Manchus, okay? The Manchus took over the Ming dynasty and they began the Qing dynasty. Now, it was during this period that there were so many Westerners in China. You have to remember that during the Ming dynasty, China subjected itself to becoming a hermit kingdom. They did not want anyone to mess with them or to interfere with their ways of life. But then during the Manchurian dynasty, Murag, the exact opposite of the Ming dynasty happened, wherein there was a rapid influx of Westerners. And when the Westerners were here, of course, seeing the products of China, this is something that they started to covet greatly. Okay, so this is a short timeline of what happened. Wow, look at that. The laser pointer has strategically been placed on this guy's nose. That was really unintentional, but kind of funny. Now, this is a short timeline of what happened during the imperialism in East Asia. So in 1793, where it all began, it was when Lord Macartney of Great Britain arrived in China. Okay, we are going to discuss more about this later. This is just kind of a run through of the important events during the Western imperialism of China. In 1839 to 1842, we have the First Opium War, which resulted in the Treaty of Nanjing. And then in 1856 to 1860, we have the Second Opium War, which resulted in the Treaty of Tianjin. In 1890 to 1899, we have the fortification of the sphere of influence in China. And as you can see, this is Uncle Sam, right? America now joined the imperialism in East Asia. That is why I chose that picture. And then we end the imperialism of East Asia with the open door policy of the United States. So as a recap, we start with the arrival of Lord Company, First Opium War, resulting in the Treaty of Nanjing, Second Opium War, resulting in the Treaty of Tianjin, fortification of the sphere of influence in China, and the open door policy of the United States. Now let's do this, okay? Hopefully you've seen the big picture. Again, the convenient thing I think of having a video of the lecture is that if there is something you did not understand, you can always go back. Now, the reign of the Qing dynasty. Dynasty, again, a foreign rule led by Manchus. Okay. Now, the reign of the Qing dynasty this is the last dynasty of China. It began in 1644 and it ended around World War I, which is 1912. It's a pretty long dynasty, but of course, it's as long as the Ottoman dynasty, not the Ottoman Empire, but the Manchurian dynasty was quite long. This is China's last dynasty, and there are two notable emperors during this time. The first is the Kangxi Emperor. Kangxi Emperor ruled in 1662 to 1722, and it was during this time that he recruited a lot of elite scholars because he wanted his administration to be very Confucian. He really liked the Confucian way of governance, with the bureaucracy and the civil service exam and everything that Confucius believed in. He wanted that to be implemented during his rule. So, during his rule, there were a lot of elite scholars, and then they were educating everyone so that they will be more Confucian, okay? Now, another notable emperor during this time is the Qianlong Emperor, and it was this time, if the expansion of the mind and the government ang sa Kangxi Emperor, sa the Qianlong Emperor, it was an expansion territory. This is the period where China reached all the way to Tibet and a large portion of Central Asia and even parts of Russia. So that is how big China became under the Qianlong Emperor. Now, the Europeans in China, as I said, during the Manchurian dynasty or the Qing dynasty, this is where China experienced the most interaction with the West. So who were these Europeans that arrived in China during this time? Number one are the Jesuit missionaries. So the Jesuit missionaries, this is actually Matteo Ricci and his friend Pantoja. So the Jesuit missionaries came. Now, do you remember, or was it the other class where the main goal of, if you belong to the Jesuit religious order, your main goal is to convert those who have fallen away from the Roman Catholic religion, or to have new converts. Your main goal as a religious order is not to help with whatever else except conversion. So Jesuits were very aggressive with this. Now, probably the most popular Jesuit involving China would be Matteo Ricci. Now, if you go to Macau, there are actually statues of Matteo Ricci because he was an Italian priest and he landed in Macau first. And grabe yun niya siya. He is very well loved. He's very well loved. He is very well honored. Okay? He became so, because he was very smart. He was a mathematician, he was an astronomer, and then he became so valued in the Chinese empire during the Qing dynasty. There was actually a point that he became, actually this is still in the Ming dynasty, that's where he began. He became the advisor of the emperor, and he was allowed inside the Forbidden City. I mean, it's called the Forbidden City for a reason, but Matteo Ricci, because of his prominence, because of his smarts, he was able to go inside the Forbidden City. It used to be purely Chinese, royal, noble, whatever. Pero si Matteo Ricci was allowed inside because he became the advisor of the emperor. And he was also one of the very few Europeans during this time that mastered the Chinese language, and he mastered even Chinese culture. Like, he did not have a problem imbibing Chinese culture. Now, this is the Forbidden City. Used to be off limits to non-Chinese, non-noble, non-friend of the emperor, but Matteo Ricci was able to go inside there. Just to emphasize Pagyo, the value of Matteo Ricci, he is the only, no, not the only, the first European ever allowed to be buried in China. Because when Matteo Ricci died, people were kind of like, we're not going to bury, no foreigner can be buried on Chinese soil. You know how much of the Chinese valued their own, how much they valued their culture. So they were like, no way. He cannot be buried here. But a lot of people actually petitioned for Matteo Ricci to be buried on Chinese soil. And it was successful. So he was buried on Chinese soil. Now, I think, okay, so a lot of Jesuit missionaries, right? A lot of Jesuit missionaries were there. They were spreading Roman Catholicism and all of that. So the presence of foreigners was starting to become a common thing. Now, one of the things that was installed is because, okay, the foreigners wanted to you remember our lecture on how much they wanted to control the spice trade? Like, you know, Europeans were really trying to control the spice trade. They wanted to do the same with Chinese products because actually trying to become very popular, very sought after. So a lot of Europeans wanted to control the spice trade. So they installed the Canton system. They installed the Chinese installed the Canton system. Now, Canton, I know our familiarity with Canton is pancit. Actually, pancit Canton is named because this is the kind of noodle dish that came from Canton, which is a province of China. Okay? Oh my gosh, now I want pancit Canton. And there's some in the kitchen. Maybe after this, I'm gonna go grab some pancit Canton. Anyway, so the Chinese wanted to control the trade with the Westerners because they were like, ay, nagdika, it's getting too wild. So they installed the Canton system wherein the only place where the West could trade was in Canton province. Nowhere else in China could the West enter and trade. So this was the only port open. Do you understand? This was the only port open, and oh, it's so blurry, gross. Anyway, and this trade in Canton, under the Canton system, only Hongs were allowed to supervise the trade. If you were a Chinese Hong, your job was to make sure the trade with the West in Canton exclusively smoothly. Plus, the Chinese installed a system of koto wherein you had to touch your forehead all the way to the ground. The Westerners had to do a koto whenever they would face a Chinese official. Now, why do you think they did this? Please try to write comments in the, I know that this will be linked to YouTube actually, and then the comments in YouTube will be on. I want to see what your thoughts are on this. Why do you installed the Canton system, the Hongs, and the Koto in relation to trade with the West? Okay, so please type up your comments. I'm going to read your comments and see what I can do with your amazing thoughts. Okay, now, this caused a problem with the West, actually. The Canton system, the Hongs, and the Koto, they felt that this was a little unfair. Now, I'm just going to proceed to the next slide so it's not so distracting. Now, particularly, there was a problem with the British because the British were starting to look at their wallets, metaphorically, and they were like, kita may sigig palit. We are the ones who are always buying from China, but China doesn't seem to be buying anything from us. Why is it that China keeps producing? I think this is still the situation now. I do not think China imports anything of ours. Do they? I'm not aware. You can comment also if you have thoughts on that comment I just made. I'm not sure if there is anything that China buys from us, but are we buying stuff from China? Oh, yeah, a lot. You can probably check your household items now, and then I think a majority will be made in China, right? We buy so much from China. This was a problem, and the British did not like this because when they would open their purses, they would be like, "Nahurot naman, my silver is depleting. The silver of the nation is depleting because we keep buying from China. China doesn't buy anything from us. And it's not like the trade was exclusive. So China would trade with other countries also. So they were like, okay, so if they have products from China, we have products from China. It's not even exclusive. What can we sell China that China will definitely buy? Okay, hi. Sorry for that pause. I know it felt like a millisecond to you, but it was quite a long pause. Anyway, let's continue. I think I mentioned something about how the British were looking for something that they could sell the Chinese just to even the situation out because for now they were buying so much and the Chinese were buying nothing because the Chinese were very happy with their products. And then, the Chinese pride, they believe that their products are really kind of the best. Okay. Now, so this is actually the beginning of the import or the sale of this item. It's a very pretty flower. I was even thinking, you know what? The bud is so pretty. It would be very nice to kind of paint this or add this to this, but then you will have like opium in your paint. Anyway, never mind. But the British discovered this product. Okay, this was produced by North India. This product, the sap of this product would be dried, and when they would, it would look like this. And when you would apply heat to it, it produced a smoke that acted as a downer. This is not a party drug. When you take opium, you don't go tugs, tugs, tugs. You don't do that. You go and you're sleepy and you're relaxed, you're chill, you forget your problem. So that was the appeal of opium as a drug. So it was turned into powder, they applied smoke to it, and China loved this. Probably because they were involved in so much business, with the Hongs and the Canton system and the Manchus ruling over them who were foreigners. They were a bunch of stressed people. So the Chinese really liked this. In fact, there was a point where they started to build opium dens. So this would be an opium den wherein it was kind of like a spa, but instead of people massaging people, the people would sort of dispense opium and people would just go there, smoke it. You see these people, they're smoking the opium and they would just sleep in this den. And so it was still kind of, can you see Chanel? Did you see her tail? She's so cute. Anyway, so they would go to these opium dens and they would just smoke their opium and sleep, and then pretty soon the entire nation of China had an opium problem. They had a drug problem, and the emperor got really mad at this. Okay, the emperor was like, no. Maybe he was kind of like Duterte. When I show you the attempts that the government made against this opium addiction, you will be like, familiar, tokhang. Anyway, so these are the attempts made by the government. So anyone caught using or smuggling opium to China would be sentenced to death. So if you would be caught using opium or trying to smuggle opium into China, you would instantly be killed. The second, confiscation and burning of 20,000 containers of opium brought by the British. Oh man, this is the one. This number two attempt by the government, this is the one that really caused Britain to declare war because that's 20,000 containers of opium. Now, I know you know not by personal experience, I hope, that drugs do not come cheap. Drugs are not cheap. It's not like you can buy them for 5 pesos, although maybe there are 5 peso drugs, I'm not sure. But 20,000 containers of opium from the British just kind of confiscated and burned. Wait, if they burned 20,000 containers of opium, wouldn't like that cause the entire China to be hyped? Anyway, maybe, I don't know. So this is actually the reason why the British declared the first Opium War. So this is the first Opium War. Um, the British were very confident that they would win this because the British had the best navy. At this point, they had the best navy. This was proven in Europe, and now it was proving itself. It was proving itself in Asia. So Britain won this one. Okay, Britain definitely won by far. It was not even like a close fight. It was not even kind of like, oh, was that a tie or something? It was really dead. The British won quite easily, which resulted in this treaty. Now, in this from this point, every time we discuss a war, whenever a war would be won, there's always a treaty that follows. Okay, so this, like, remember when the Spanish war, the war against the Spanish was won, there was a Treaty of Paris. So kani when the Opium War was won, there was a Treaty of Nanjing. So actually, a good question to ask whenever you hear about a war, no, is what treaty was signed after it. Okay, now anyway, that was just a side point. So the first, one of the, these are not the only provisions of the treaty, but these are some of the annoying ones for the Chinese. The Chinese government were to pay a total sum of $21 million in installment every 3 years. Now, they just lost a war and they were supposed to pay $21 million. Chinese weren't happy. Opening of 4 new trading ports. Now, the Canton system was starting to break down here. Before, the Chinese tried to control everything. Sige, we will only trade from Canton. But this time, because of this treaty, they had to open 4 new trading ports. The Chinese did not like this either. Cession of Hong Kong to Britain. You know, it's very interesting. Hong Kong was just returned to China actually in was it 2001? I'm not sure. Can you comment below? I'm sure maybe Z knows. Do you know Z? Anyway, cession of Hong Kong to Britain. So Hong Kong became an official territory of Britain. It was not just a trading port. It actually became a British territory. And the gaining of Britain's extraterritoriality in China. Now, that's a huge, long word, and I'm going to define it in the next slide. So, Britain gained extraterritoriality in China. So, these are the four provisions of the Treaty of Nanjing. Now, what is extraterritoriality? Extraterritoriality pertains to a state wherein foreigners who have been accused of a crime will be tried in their own court, which is at the consulate. So, okay, and are exempted from the jurisdiction of the law where the crime was committed. So, in the case of the extraterritoriality of Britain in China, if a British man commits murder in China, he will not be tried in a Chinese court. He will be tried in a British court. Okay? And this British man accused of murder is exempted from the jurisdiction of the law where the crime was committed. So basically, China cannot touch him. This British guy who committed a murder, it's not like he will be set free, but Britain will try him, not China. Okay. I want you to comment below one advantage and one disadvantage to extraterritoriality. Okay, I'm going to check your comments later, but I want you to put one disadvantage, whether if you're Chinese, is there, for example, if your advantage is if you were British, then you put there as a citizen of Britain, or the British will have advantage because, or the British will have disadvantage because. Okay, so please comment below a disadvantage and advantage to this, whether you are British or Chinese. Okay, so is extraterritoriality clear? Now, after the first Opium War and the Treaty of Nanjing, China was not pleased. Okay, they were not pleased with the Treaty of Nanjing. They thought it was quite unfair. So there was an incident that happened. It's called the Lorcha Arrow. Now, the Lorcha Arrow, as you can see, there are Chinese people here. There are British people here. Now, the Lorcha Arrow arrested the crew of a British ship. It was called the Arrow, the SS something Arrow. A British ship, and refused to apologize for breaking extraterritoriality because there was this ship, the Arrow, was smuggling gidakop. 'Di ba extraterritoriality said nga if a British person commits a crime, they cannot be arrested in the Chinese court. They cannot even be tried in a Chinese court. But the Chinese did not heed this. When they found something fishy going on in the Arrow, they captured British soldiers, and they forgot the extraterritoriality agreement. Agoy kay the British got so mad, man. Because they were like, hey, you signed the Treaty of Nanjing. How come you were Nanjing? How come you are doing this? And so violence broke out, and it actually led to the Second Opium War. So the Second Opium War was fought, and at this time the French got involved. I think for me lang ha. I think the French got involved here because they knew that the British would win, and if the British would win, maybe they will gain some territory or some trading right in China. That's my guess. I could be wrong. Okay, now the French got involved, and of course the Chinese definitely got defeated. So the Second Opium War, they were defeated again, and again there was a new treaty. Gone was Treaty of Nanjing, and now we have the Treaty of Tianjin or Tianjin. What were the provisions? There are 5. Number 1, more ports were opened. Uy, ang mga hong niingon na gyud patay. Before, we only had to watch what do you call this? We only had to watch Canton. Now we have to watch 4 other ports under the Treaty of Nanjing. Now more ports were opened. Foreigners were allowed to travel to China. This might sound weird to you because especially you can't really understand that now because we're pretty much allowed to travel anywhere as long as you get a visa or as long as you have a passport. But before, you know, katupakoto, koto, the Chinese were very strict. They still had the remnants of the Hermit Kingdom from the Ming Dynasty. So under the Treaty of Tianjin, anyone could just enter China. The Chinese were like thinking about it in a Chinese perspective, murag, man. New religions were allowed in. It was not just Roman Catholicism. Other religions were allowed to enter. Foreigners were allowed to, look at this, they were allowed to, okay. So not only were foreigners allowed to enter China, but now they were allowed to own property in China. And the 5th is China was divided into spheres of influence. I will define sphere of influence later, but this treaty, come here. Come here. Hi, you wanna see my class for a while? Just say hi quickly, huh? Hi. Hi, everyone. Chanel. Chanel. Say hi. Hi. Mwah. Okay. Do you wanna go? You wanna go to the CR? Oh, I'm recording. I forgot. Okay, wait. Wait, okay. I'll just finish this. Just wait, baby. Okay. Now, I'm going to define. Okay, this treaty, the Treaty of Tianjin, this is really where Western imperialism officially began. Because look at all the provisions of the treaty. It's so imperialistic. So this is really where everything, Western imperialism began. Now, here is sphere of influence. Sphere of influence pertains to a place wherein a foreign country enjoys and benefits from special commercial rights such as construction of ports, railroads, and factories. So, ano yun? This is it. This was really when China was officially divided into a kind of like a cake, and they just took the pieces for themselves. Nations, I will state the nations that benefited from having a sphere of influence, pero commercial rights, they did not officially put a king or a ruler or a governor general in China, but man, they really cut China up and they just kind of build new ports and railroads and everything. Now, sphere of influence and open door policy. So we have three na, no? Daghan kayo. Extraterritoriality, we have sphere of influence and influence and open door policy. Open door policy means open door. Love is an open door. China was an open door. Everybody, they didn't even have to knock because it was an open door. So Germany got a piece. Russia got a piece. Great Britain got a piece. It's not only because of opium. France got the piece. I did not put it here, but even Japan got a piece. Okay, and they were just exploiting the natural, although not a lot of natural resources, but the rail system, they built ports, the products, the production, and then the latest entry in the game would be America. America eventually joined this whole scramble for China, and they were the ones that laid down the open door. Murabag, China just kind of put a name to it. Oh, do you see the nations here? So we have here Germany, Russia, I'm guessing, Great Britain, France, and what is this? I don't know what that is. Would this be Austria? And then this would, oh, this is Austria. This is Austria because that's, or this is Germany. This is Russia. Anyway, open door policy, and it was the proponent of that was John Hay. So John Hay, actually, those who have been to Baguio, you know, there's a Camp John Hay there. Same guy. Okay, so he was the one who kind of put open door policy. You know what I hate about this? The open door policy, though it was not named open door policy, was already there because of the Treaty of Nanjing. But America comes in and redefined the terms and said it was their idea. They just changed the name, but they still called it their idea. Okay, so we're done with imperialism in East Asia, in China. And then the next topic will be, which will be in part 2, will be Japan. Okay, and I think I'm just gonna look at your book really quick. I'm gonna look at your book really quickly. I think we have to discuss Japan during the age of imperialism. And then we have, oh, that's it. So China and Japan will be part 2. And then you will have, God willing, worksheet based on this topic. Okay, so thank you for listening. Grade 8. Have a good day.